Hi, Bruce Newman here with Newman Restorations. There's been some talk recently about whether or not to use gaskets when gluing pneumatics to deck boards. It certainly does make it easier for the next person who has to remove the pneumatics to recover them. It also saves damage to the deck board. Some deck boards are rather complex laminations of various layers of wood with channeling in between. And so I think it's a good idea generally to put gaskets on. And it really doesn't have to be anything expensive. I use just regular old drywall paper tape. You can see it's got the line down the middle to help you crease it for corners. And then if you look really closely, there are all these little tiny micro perforations, like every quarter of an inch. And I guess that would help it, air escape so you don't get bubbles under it. And then also it probably helps with adhesion as well. And that's actually a benefit to us when using this to glue as a gasket between pneumatics and deck boards. Because that actually allows the glue to soak up through the paper in spots to give us better adhesion, so we don't ever have to worry about the pneumatics accidentally falling off over time. So I'm going to do a little test. I've got a board drilled here to approximate a deck board. I've got a bunch of little boards drilled as if they were pneumatic bottom boards. And so we're going to do a test. So over this section, I'm going to completely cover this area with the gasket. In this section, I'm just going to cover the area with the holes, but I'm going to leave a little bit of wood here and a little bit of wood here so that you do have some wood-to-wood bonding. It's not all gasketed. And then over here, of course, we'll just glue directly onto the wood. Then we'll wait a week and, we'll see how easy or not it is to pry the pneumatics off. So let's get started. We've got our hot glue here. We've got our warm iron over here. When we put the tape down, I like to have that the little line down the middle, the bump part of it facing up, because it makes it easy to sand off later to make sure we have a perfectly smooth surface for gluing the pneumatics on. So we just apply our hot glue. Okay. Now it's helpful to take a piece of parchment paper to put over your tape, and that keeps any glue that squeezes out off from your iron. So ironing remelts the glue, and it just smooths everything out. It allows the glue to penetrate up through those small perforations in the tape. And it helps the paper absorb the glue into the paper. And it also ensures that you're perfectly flat so that you have a nice flat surface. Now sometimes your tape moves around a little bit and you can just reposition it slightly. But you can see here where the glue has actually started to come up through the little micro perforations in the paper. Okay, so the next one, we just use one piece. It's important to get all the paper covered with glue. And we'll leave about 1/4 of an inch of bare wood here and about 1/2 inch on the other side. Get an iron on there. You can tell when the glue melts because the tape will move a little bit. You can actually see the glue melting out from under the paper. Okay. Once again, you can sort of see these areas where the glue has soaked into the paper. So that lets you know that, you're going to have a really good bond there. So we'll let this sit for 40 minutes to an hour, and then I'll take a sharp knife and cut out the holes in the deck board, and then we can glue on our quote-unquote pneumatics, and we'll let that sit for a week or so, and then we'll try peeling off the various pneumatics and see how the gasket works. Okay, we're ready to glue the pneumatics, quote-unquote, onto the deck board. So here I've got the pneumatic boards warmed up on my iron. I've got a heat lamp about 9 inches away from the deck board, warming that. So we're ready to go ahead and glue on the first 3. I don't use any clamps at all. If your board is nice and smooth and your pneumatics are flat, then there's absolutely no need to. So let's go ahead and apply the glue. I always make sure it's just a little heavier right around the hole. I should mention that I took a block of sandpaper and just very lightly sanded the paper down to make sure that there weren't any glue bumps or anything that would, hold the pneumatic up from being completely flat on there. Okay, I'll go ahead and finish gluing on the rest of these, and then we'll wait about a week and I'll pry them off and we'll see what happens. So a week has passed and now it's time to see how difficult or easy it is to remove the various pneumatics from the deck here. Once again, we have full coverage with the paper gasket, partial coverage with the paper gasket, and then, of course, just direct wood on wood here. So let's, first of all, just see if I can pry any of these off using just finger pressure. Okay. With some very strong, firm pressure, this one pops off. And that's definitely way more than will ever be exerted during the course of playing the piano pneumatically. Okay. All right. So those can come off with extreme hand pressure. Now let's try these guys here to see if they're any different. Nope, they're not going to budge. So let's try a mallet and a putty knife here. Wow, look at that. That actually took off a bunch of the wood. Try coming from the back end here. Even that left a piece of wood on there. Now we'll try coming from the side. We'll chip a little of this glue off first here. So coming from the side worked a little better, but still you've got slight amounts of damage. Okay. I think for this one I'm going to need to clamp this down. Okay. All right, we've cleaned off the glue. Kind of what you might expect there. Comes off but with damage. There we've got some damage both to the pneumatic and the deck. All right, I'm definitely convinced that putting on paper gaskets is the right way to go, and that there's definitely no way that during normal course of playing, even at high intensities, these pneumatics are ever going to pop off on their own. It took a lot of force to get them to pop off, but they did, and there's obviously no damage. All you'd have to do is sand off the paper and start again. So I think this definitely is a winner. Hi everybody, Bruce Newman here with Newman Restorations. I just want to demonstrate the way I install paper gaskets on deck boards prior to installing the pneumatics, just to make it easier to get the pneumatics off in the future without ruining the deck board for whomever ends up having to restore it the next time. So what I've got here is my warm iron, a little bit of tape. I have a piece of spare wood that's longer than the deck board that I'm going to be putting glue on. I've pre-cut a couple pieces of drywall paper tape, enough to cover the width of the deck board. And of course you want to make sure that the piece that covers the holes is a whole piece. You don't want to leave any kind of a seam running through the holes, because that could leak. So just make sure that however you lay out your tape, that you've got a piece covering the holes completely. And I've got some parchment paper that I'll use to put on top of the paper once it's been glued, to keep the glue from getting on my iron and making a sticky mess. So let me move the deck board out of the way for a minute. We don't apply the glue to the deck board. We apply it directly to the paper, and that keeps things much neater and much more in control and less messy. So I'm going to stretch the drywall tape as much as I can and tape the ends down just so that it's completely taut along the length of the board. Let's scooch it up to my glue pot here. And then you apply the glue, and just make sure that you're getting everything completely covered. If there's a little bit of something, just pick it up and move it off to the side. You can see the tape begins to swell a little bit from the water and the glue, but that's not a problem. Just want to make sure that you get glue everywhere. Because obviously any part that doesn't get glued down is a potential leak for you. Okay, that looks good. So we'll bring our board back. So you can just grab this by the taped ends, put it exactly where you want it, and lay it down. And then you can come back and just trim off any bit of excess. Okay, now for the next piece of tape. Okay, and we're ready for glue again. Okay, looks pretty good. We can bring back our deck. And just repeat the process. We want the tape to butt up but not overlap. There we go. And once again, trim off the excess from the ends. And now we get out our parchment. And we want to remelt that glue. So that we're smoothing it. We want the glue to soak into the paper. My parchment paper wants to curl up on me. So you can see the glue is oozing up between the pieces. That's a wonderful sign. That means you've got that glue warm enough to remelt. You want this to end up just as smooth as it can possibly be. Move down to the end here. There's about a ½ inch that hangs over that I will trim off in a little bit once the glue gels again. And then at that time I'll take my X-Acto knife and cut out all the holes for the pneumatics. Okay. All right, so that part is done. It looks great. And it's helpful just as the glue is starting to gel again, just to run a block over it, just to make sure that it's very well glued down everywhere. Okay, so that feels great. It looks good. It looks nice and flat and smooth. So we'll let that sit for a few minutes and then cut out all the holes.